trying to make me. I wanna leave and you're making, yeah. I try to see the one I need to love.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Linda Tina TV. If it's not your first time here, if it is your first time, hello there, I see you. Do remember to subscribe and check out my older videos to see if something interests you there. So, as you have seen from the title of this video, I am going to be talking about assumptions people have about those living abroad, where abroad can mean anywhere outside the country you call home. Home is where you were born, where you were raised, or where you've lived for a long time. I am super excited about this video because it's also a collaboration with another Ugandan YouTuber called Faye. Hey Faye! So her channel is Kukienda. I'll leave it in the description box and I'll also leave a link to the video, a similar video that she made about assumptions living abroad. She's currently living in Greece, and what's very exciting and interesting about her channel is that she talks about traveling on a budget. So she shows you that you don't have to be super rich or you don't have to go so far to explore the world. And then she also talks about living abroad as a student. She is a student. She's been studying in Greece and she's been to so many beautiful places. She also shows you very many lovely places in Uganda where you can travel and explore and basically just enjoy and be inspired. So I will leave her channel in the description box like I've mentioned, but I'll also give you a sneak peek just so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about.
My name is Faye and this channel is all about travel. It's all about life abroad. I'm currently living in Europe and I love to show you guys what that is like. I love to share my tips and experiences and stories from my travels. So that's what this channel is really about. I hope you enjoy the content that's on here, and if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe.
So if you're here from the Kukienda YouTube channel, please let me know down in the comment section so I can recognize you. And without further ado, let's get into those assumptions. Before I get into the first assumption, I'll just let you know that as you watch further into the video, you'll realize that many of these assumptions lean mostly on the side of people where I come from my continent, from Africa, Uganda, and the assumptions they have about friends and family that have gone to live in the Western world. They'll mostly lean on that side, but it could be anyone. It could be someone from the USA who moved to live in Europe, to live in Italy, and the assumptions people back home may have towards them. So I have had friends and family living abroad since I was a child, and I've also had these assumptions about them myself. The first one and the most popular one I got on my Instagram being that people abroad are super rich. If I can read some of your comments from Instagram, we assume that you have lots and lots of money, that you have money on you all the time, that you pick money from trees. That's just a way of saying that money comes so easily for you. This is a common assumption, probably because the salaries abroad are probably higher than the salaries you leave back home. But people have to remember that also the cost of living is higher than the cost of living. So it just kind of matches the salaries. And this assumption also comes from the fact that obviously visas and plane tickets cost money. But that doesn't mean that someone has money on them all the time. We also pay bills. We also, have to go about life the same way people in other parts of the world or back home have to go about life. So this assumption is totally not true. Next assumption is that people abroad miss home and will eventually come back. Following that assumption, there's also another assumption that people abroad do not miss home and never want to come back. So I'll address these two separately. The one about missing home, I think home will always be home no matter how good you have it elsewhere, at least for me and for many people that I've spoken to. Missing home and eventually going back, that's really individual. Not everybody has an end plan of going back home. It also depends the reason why you're abroad. If you're abroad for work and the work gets terminated, obviously you'll go back home. If you're abroad like me because I married abroad, so I have kids here, Even if I might miss home, this may become my new home, and so I have no plans of going back, at least not in the near future. And then also there are people who have adapted so well to the new countries abroad where they live that they don't miss home. They actually get a reverse culture shock when they go back to their homes, to where they've been born and raised. So this one depends on on each individual circumstances, and so I can say it's partially true and partially not true. Then the other side that says that we don't miss home at all and we want to stay abroad forever. That's a very common assumption, because people think, that was the other assumption actually, that the grass is always greener abroad. So, I mean, there are more opportunities depending on where you've come from, but there can be more opportunities back home where you've come from, and so you just want to be abroad for a short time and then go back home where the grass may not seem greener, but there are more virgin opportunities to explore, if that makes sense. So not everybody wants to stay abroad forever. Not everybody wants to die in a country where they don't have their childhood friends and their family, your closest family, your mom, your sisters, your siblings. It's different when the whole family moves abroad. So also that assumption that we never ever want to go back home, we want to stay abroad forever, is not entirely true. But like I mentioned, there are people who actually create their new homes in the new countries where they move. Another assumption was that I assume that you have house help, drivers, gardeners, basically people to do everything for you. The irony, it's the exact opposite. Now, having this kind of help, gardeners and live-in house help, is much cheaper. For example, back in Africa, in Uganda, where I come from, you don't need so much. You don't need to be rich. You don't need to be a very high status family to have help around the house. On the other side, where I'm currently living in Europe, Italy, the kind of families that have this kind of help are families that are really well-to-do families. So no, that assumption is not true at all. Obviously, I'm speaking for myself as a middle-class citizen. Then if there's someone out there who's moved and maybe they are expatriates working for these very big companies that offer that kind of stuff, probably. But the bigger number, no, we don't have that kind of help. And that's one thing I miss about home. I assume that they have access to better social services, education, healthcare, jobs with better pay. So this is partially true, speaking from my experience, someone coming from Africa, Uganda, living in Europe. So if you're coming from a third world country to the Western world where it's more developed, yes, the healthcare is definitely much better. Italian healthcare, for example, is very fantastic. Education systems are more organized, and then also, of course, there's better infrastructure, more advanced infrastructure. So in that sense, yes, that assumption is true, depending on where you're coming from. But also about better jobs. Yes, though I must mention there are countries abroad where the unemployment rates are really high, just as they are back home where, for example, I come from. So in that area, I don't want to entirely say it's true, but in terms of healthcare infrastructure, more organized systems, yeah, to an extent that's true. This was an interesting one. I think 3 people mentioned it. I assume that everyone living abroad comes back home with an accent from where they've been living. Most of the time it is fake. It's funny that someone mentions this because I live in Italy, so I speak Italian. And when I went back home, I remember someone asked me, how come you still sound very Ugandan? How come you still have a Ugandan accent? Because they assumed that after 8 years living abroad in Italy, I would come back with an accent. I don't know what kind of accent. My English has changed a bit, to be honest, from speaking Italian. There are times where I've inserted Italian words because I'm so used to the conversations in Italian. But about the accent, when you live with people, you start to adopt the way they speak, and the accent comes with it. How much and how concentrated this accent is going to be is very individual. There are people who are going to go abroad and come back with an accent after 1 week. I have relatives and siblings who have lived abroad in the UK, in the US, for more than 15 years, and their accents are really subtle. You'll only hear their accents, their British or American accents, when they speak to people with a similar accent, which comes naturally. So about the accents being fake or real, I won't say much. The fake accents are there. There are people who are definitely going to come back with an accent and you're thinking, no, that didn't happen that fast. And then there are people who genuinely pick up these accents pretty quick, and so come back sounding a little different from how they left home. This one says that I assume that everyone living abroad is doing odd jobs because it's hard for them to get into real professional jobs. That is not true. Even if I must admit that very many times when you come, for example, from Africa, from Uganda, and come into the Western world, for example, your qualifications and your experiences may not be taken seriously, and so you have to start from the bottom, like literally from the bottom. So if you're out here and you need to earn money to live, you're definitely going to be more inclined to take any job that comes so that you can kind of make that quick money. Or while you're studying, students come here and do odd jobs. By odd jobs, I mean not professional jobs, like manual jobs. It can be a housekeeping job, it can be babysitting job, those kind of jobs is what I mean by odd jobs. So yeah, students and people who are still trying to get their lives together are going to find themselves doing these jobs. But then there are also people who have come abroad as expatriates, and so they are doing real professional jobs. And then there are people who have come abroad, studied, done short courses that have got them real professional jobs. So this assumption that everybody living abroad is out sweeping the streets or doing some dirty jobs, I'm not going to downplay any job, because at the end of the day, work is work and someone has to do it. But there is this common assumption that everyone is doing, dirty work, and because maybe you are from a third world country, you can't find a good job or no one will hire you. That's not entirely true. But this also depends a lot on where you are, obviously. Some places are going to have more opportunities, more job opportunities than others. Hey Linda, my assumption is that people living abroad, especially people of color coming from our continent, Africa, I believe, face racism all the time. Okay, on the topic of racism, this is a big topic. One, the amount of racism you're going to face and the type of racism you're going to face depends a lot on where you are, which country you're in, but not only which country you're in, which city you're in, which neighborhood you're in. Some cities are more diverse and more open-minded than others. Some cities, like the smaller cities, are more closed-minded. Now, if I'm to speak for myself, my individual experience, I have not faced any direct racism, like directly to me. I have not had that experience, thank God. But of course, I've had those microaggressions or those subtle comments, or when you can tell that someone doesn't feel very comfortable sitting next to you. And I've sent out applications everywhere. I have a job right now, but I've got no responses from some of the applications and job interviews I've done. I don't know if that could be related to my race or not, so I won't say anything about that. But also in the workforce, people have mentioned that they've gone through racism. The assumption that we go through racism on a daily, I would like to say no, because honestly, I can't say that each time I walk out of my house, I'm going to face racism. I wouldn't say that. But in some areas, the racism is much, much heavier than in others. I live in Milan, obviously, which is a more international city. So they're kind of used to seeing different people, but still that subtle racism, and obviously informing myself about the situation of people of color in this country and in this city, I know that racism does exist. So yeah. My assumption is that people living abroad are always on holiday. Their Instagram handles look like they're always on vacation. Is that directed to me? Because when you look at my Instagram handle, you could actually think I'm always on holiday. But here's one thing. When you live abroad, depending on where you live, sometimes you actually live in a vacation destination. For example, I live in Italy, which is a beautiful country. I could go 5 minutes out of my city and find like the best places ever, and that would look like I'm on vacation all the time, but I'm just, a few minutes out of the city where I live. So if you live in a travel destination, obviously it's going to look like you're always on vacation, but vacationing costs money. And so I don't think that that's a very true assumption. But what could be true is that, for example, if you live in Europe, it's easy to travel around the Schengen states. For example, you don't need to ask for a visa to move within the Schengen area. So traveling is made easy. The tickets cost not so much, especially if you buy them on time. And that's why you need to go and check out my girl's channel. She's showing you how you can travel for much less. And so if you see someone living abroad, moving about like all the time, it may look like they're always on vacation, but it's because it's actually easier. Also because of proximity, or it's because they already live in a travel destination. And so life is basically, or looks like, a vacation. The last assumption is that I assume that people living abroad are generally lonely and get depressed very easily. This assumption is mostly true, depends on your circumstances. As with everything, depends on what your circumstances and your way of life is where you're living abroad. If you move with your whole family, I don't think you get as lonely as someone who moved alone. But life abroad can get lonely because obviously you're far away from your immediate family. You're far away from the familiarity of things, the things you know, the things you grew up with. In my case, I've lived in Italy for many years. I've created a circle of friends. I've created a community of my own that I feel a part of. But still, I miss home, and it gets lonely sometimes when you want to maybe speak your language with a friend close by, or you want to eat food from back home. You always get that feeling. So the feeling of loneliness, I personally think it never goes away. And if you're living abroad for a short time, like if you're going to be abroad for just study for a short time, it's also hard to create a community, to create a circle of friends so fast. So yeah, I think that assumption is pretty much true. It gets a bit lonely, but it also depends on what kind of person you are. If you're too busy exploring and learning about the new place where you are, you may not get lonely because life will be too busy and exciting. So it's very important that when you move abroad, you're open-minded to meeting new people and doing new things, so that you don't constantly think about, oh, if I was back home, what would I be doing? So we've come to the end of this video. I put some of the assumptions together, the ones that were similar. I hope I got to answer each one of them. If you have any other assumptions, you can leave them down in the comment section and I will respond, or someone in the comment section will respond. Let's have a conversation. Do not forget to go and check out a similar video by my friend, YouTube buddy, fellow Ugandan, Faye. Her channel name again is Kugenda by Faye Kakai. She talks about travel, she talks about studying abroad and everything in between there. She's moving to different countries. So currently she's in Greece, but she's going to be moving to many different countries. You want to be there and tag along with her travel stories. And if you are here from her channel, so happy to have you. Remember to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, go over to her channel. Let her know that you're from Linda Tina TV. Subscribe to her channel and stay tuned. See you in my next video. Bye bye.